Good morning. Welcome to Coffee with Alain. Special program today. We're talking about books because it is Saturday. We're also doing a special tribute to Marine Sniper, Gunnery Sergeant Carlos Hathcock. Hope you're having a good start to your weekend. Remember, I do these shows about books and about reading to encourage you to read more. Read for entertainment, read for education. Read the newsletter you can get at enjoylifesafely.com. Be sure to get on that list. Now, this week, sort of special books I'm going to talk about because I just finished listening to Silent Warrior by Charles Henderson. Read the book when it came out back in like 2000, but Audible had the book for free. I noticed it and said, oh, wow. And I grabbed that, and it was only available until next month sometime. So I had to get it in the listening queue quick or it was going to go away. So I've been listening to this and finished it yesterday. Great book about stories about Carlos Hathcock. And this was the follow-up book to Charles Henderson's first book, Marine Sniper, which I read years ago when it first came out. And so those two books by Charles Henderson, great books on Carlos Hathcock, telling the stories. And this one was written while Carlos was still alive and became very popular. This book, The Silent Warrior, Henderson wrote after Carlos passed away, using a lot of the notes and things that he had and the stories that didn't fit in the first book because of they had to trim it down to publish it. The other book I have here, White Feather. Now, this book has a lot about Carlos Hathcock, but it also just is filled with photographs and different things. So a little different from Henderson's books, which are just text. You know, this book by Chandler, Carlos Hathcock, White Feather, you can see it's signed by Carlos Hathcock and by both the Chandlers that wrote the book. So it's sort of special because it is signed by Carlos. It is signed by the authors. So, and just a good book, and it has a lot of the photos and stuff, which is really cool. This book is not signed because it was written after Carlos passed away. And, it tells stories right up to the time of Carlos's death. And so, and I haven't met or I don't know Charles Henderson. So this book is not signed. Going to say good morning to Richard. Richard's here and said, good morning, never stop reading. And then Dixon's here and Dixon says, wasn't that his nickname? Yes, White Feather, the title of this book, was his nickname. And so Charles Henderson talks about that nickname in both of his books. And I'm going to open this book here real quick. There's one of Carlos's business cards, and it's White Feather Inc. Joe Hathcock was the president. Okay. And so that's one of his business cards from when he was teaching sniping skills to law enforcement and so forth afterwards. And so I'm going to hold up this book. This, again, the older book that I just pulled the business card out of is pretty special because it's not just signed. I mean, it's personally signed by Gunny Hathcock. To Alain Burris, I hope all the good things come your way. Semper Fi, Carlos Hathcock, Gunnery Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, retired. So this is sort of special. And again, I have the business cards that he used to have. And I have a little note from Joe Hathcock that I keep in this book too. And then I have a couple Christmas cards from Carlos and Joe. Those are kept in a different place. So sort of special. Now something sort of different, not really related to the books, but listening to this book got me thinking about it. And I even mentioned it on yesterday's show. But before these two books, The White Feather and The Silent Warrior, came out, I had this book and I have it autographed. And I talked to Carlos a few times. And one of the times I talked to him, I was in Michigan with my friend Frank, who was also a sniper with me in Korea when we served in the 80s. And I told Frank about Carlos. And he's like, "Wait, you know him? You can..." I said, "Yeah, you want to talk to him?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, let's get the phone." And so we called him up, and I told Carlos, I said, "Hey, my buddy Frank is here. He was a sniper with me in Korea. He wanted to say hi." And so Carlos talked to Frank for a little bit. Frank got to talk to him. The last time I called Carlos was the fall of 98. I forget if it was September or October when I called him. It was after Frank had been killed in the hang gliding accident. Frank was a best friend, was a sniper with me in South Korea in the 80s. He is memorialized in the novel Lost Conscience. The Frank character, Frank Sinich, is actually based on Frank Spears, a friend of mine. And he was killed in a hang gliding accident my first year of law school, 98, the fall of 98. Frank had helped me with the Hapkido Hoshinsel video. If you ever watched that Hapkido Hoshinsel, it came out on VHS back then DVD. It will be part of the online courses that I'm creating right now. Just a little behind with those because of the medical issues the last couple of years. But Frank was in that video with me, him and Brian. And Frank never even got to see the videos because then he got killed with that hang gliding accident before the video even came out. And that's why there's a special honor to him at the end of that video. But after he had passed away, got killed, I called Carlos. I was going to tell Carlos about it and talk to him a little. Carlos lost many friends and many people that he knew in the Vietnam War. And unfortunately, he could not come to the phone. I talked to Jo, his wife, and she told me Carlos can't come to the phone anymore. And it was just a few months after that, February of 99, that Carlos passed away. And so it was just interesting because, I've read these books way back when they first came out. But re-listening to Silent Warrior, finishing it yesterday, I was thinking that it doesn't seem that long ago. And it doesn't seem that long ago, that last phone call when Frank got killed and Jo told me he couldn't come to the phone. But it was 1998. He died February 99. And thinking about that, Carlos was always older than me. He was more my dad's age because my dad was also the Vietnam veteran. My dad spent 2 tours in Vietnam. And now I think back about those phone calls and the different things. And the last time I called him, he was younger than I am right now when he died. He died of MS, which he believes was complicated and exasperated by the injuries he sustained, the burns over 90% of his body in an accident in Vietnam when a track that he was on got blown up. He threw a bunch of people off the track, saving their lives, and then was the last one to get off with the severe burns. And the combination of that and then the MS is why he died. And he was only 56 years old when he died. And so it's just sort of sombering to think that, wow, he was younger than I am now when he passed away. But the things he did in the military and after the military, helping soldiers, helping law enforcement, saving lives, doing the best that he possibly could to serve. And some of the things he told me in our conversations about doing your best, not being a slug, making things matter, doing what you can to make a difference, those kind of things that we would talk about. Paying attention to detail and how that was so important. That was something he always stressed. All things relevant now. but just sort of, made me think, wow, I'm older than he was when he passed away. And then just thinking of all the things he did. And you can learn a lot about what he did through, these books. I know these two are still available. I see them at the used bookstores. I'm sure you can get them at the new bookstores, new copies of them. And you can get them both on Audible because, like I said, I just listened to the one. I do not know if this is still available or not. You probably can find copies. I don't know if you'll get them autographed and signed, unless there's old copies that are signed that are being sold somewhere, obviously. But just wanted people to know about the books and about a true American hero, a Marine that didn't care about awards and medals or anything. He cared about doing the right thing, doing what he could, and helping fellow Marines. And so, someone I have great respect for. Wanted to share the books, share a little bit about him. You can check it out. You can find the books. You can find the Audible. You can find stories about him online. You probably can find some of the video recordings of him. Way back, Paladin with John Plaster. I had a chance to meet John Plaster before. Plaster did some videos where he interviewed Carlos Hathcock. Plaster had The Ultimate Sniper, great book, and then the updated version of that said, good guy, really liked John. And he did some interviews, and I have those, I think on VHS. I don't know if I have them on DVD. It's one of the reasons I keep a VHS player in my house for some of these old VHS tapes that I have. But you might be able to find those interviews online too. Very interesting too. And so I encourage you to look for those videos, look for these books, whether written or audible, if you want to know a little bit more about a Vietnam sniper who I had great respect for. And I'm honored to have had the chance to know him, and the little bit that, we got to interact and talk, and some of the things that he told me, which I still remember forever. And so that's what I wanted to share with you today. Dixon said, it's the Marine Corps birthday, November 10th. Yes, it will be. Everybody, make it a spectacular Saturday. Read for enjoyment. Read for education. Read the newsletter at enjoylifesafely.com. You can get it by downloading any of the free guides I have, which those are something you should read too. I will be back to see you tomorrow. Talk about the movie I saw last night.